The undefeated BYU Cougars are tracking toward the Big 12 championship game.
The snap, the ride, the keep by Retzloff, the touchdown!
And possibly a berth into the college football playoffs.
Jet sweep, cut up field, get in for 6, touchdown! LJ with the TD.
BYU, the team nobody predicted, led by the quarterback no one believed in, now ranked number 11 in the nation. Before Arlington or the postseason, 5 teams stand in the way, starting with the UCF Knights.
Their record does not speak for how good of a football team they're probably the best 3-4 football team in the country, and I know they're going to play us really tough, especially since they'll be at home.
You're listening to special extended pregame coverage. BYU, UCF, sponsored by UCCU. Love where you bank. Our hosts are Mitch Harper and Matt Baiamonte on Utah's legacy home of the Cougars, KSL News Radio.
Good morning, Cougar Nation. Welcome on into extended pregame coverage. BYU versus UCF. Mitch Harper, Matt Baiamonte with you from Orlando, Florida, as the undefeated Cougars look to take down the UCF Knights, who are currently on a 4-game losing streak. Matt, this is a big game for BYU. They're all big when you're a 7-0 team, number 11 in the AP Top 25 poll. So much on the line for these undefeated Cougars.
Yeah, what's really on the line, Mitch, is a little separation, a little breathing room, some larger margin for error in terms of making it to the Big 12 championship game. UCF, I think last week we all thought UCF was just going to fold and get blown out by the Cyclones in Ames, and yet they should have won that football game if it wasn't for a miraculous game-winning drive by Rocco Becht and crew for Iowa State. We might be thinking about this game a little differently, but they ended up losing that game, and yet the Knights are still capable of beating BYU, and you want to remain undefeated as long as possible, Mitch. You got that trump card in your back pocket, which is the tiebreaker against Kansas State. I think that's going to become valuable when it all shakes out. But if you're going to win this game, you head into another bye week, you get healthy, maybe Connor payback for the Utah game. So, look, you can still get to the Big 12 championship game if you lose later today, Mitch. But this is not the game you want to stumble with the Knights being just an average Big 12 team.
You can follow our coverage throughout the day on the KSL Sports app. Follow us on X, Baiamonte Matt, Mitch_Harper. We will be inside the bounce house for BYU and UCF today. Kickoff at 1:30, 3:30 Eastern. It's going to be a nationally televised game on ESPN and then, of course, heard right here on KSL News Radio. BYU, of course, is riding an epic high after last week's last-second game-winning drive from Jake Retzloff, but they've turned the page, Jake and crew, and Jake is giving a lot of kind of interesting credit to this UCF Knight team.
Their record does not speak for how good of a football team they're probably the best 3-4 football team in the country, and probably a lot better than a lot of people who have better records than them. Just they fly around, they do a lot of good things, defensively especially. I mean, you guys saw the way that the Iowa State game ended on Saturday. I know this is a really tough team, and they played them really tough. I know they're going to play us really tough, especially since they'll be at home. So going to their place, it'll be a fun trip.
Best 3-4 team in the country. Is that a compliment, Matt?
I guess. I mean, I wouldn't say they're one of the best 3-4 teams in the country. I think UCF is beatable. They're one-dimensional, Mitch. We're going to talk about that for the next 2.5 hours. We'll have you all the way up until 11:30 Mountain Standard Time with this extended pregame coverage. And the predominant theme is going to be, can BYU's defense bounce back in the rush game category? Because that's all UCF can do. They're dynamic running the football at times, regardless of the quarterback, and they will have a new starting quarterback. KJ Jefferson, the big fella from Arkansas that transferred in, he's out. He wasn't effective, but it doesn't really matter. This team wants to run the football. This is, and it's kind of an interesting dynamic. When you think of UCF football, the last time BYU beat them was in that bowl game in 2020. And also kind of interesting to juxtapose that 2020 run capped off by a big win against UCF. And now you're having another magnificent run in 2024. And here comes UCF, except that UCF team had Dylan Gabriel in 2020 and they threw the football all over the yard. This isn't that UCF team, Mitch.
Definitely is not. UCF and BYU, two relatively new Big 12 programs, joined the Big 12 last season. I think in terms of the newcomers, the 8 teams that have joined in the last 2 years, I think these two programs were the most excited for being part of the Big 12 conference because both teams have dreamed of being in this setting of being power conference teams. It's interesting when you look at the history of BYU and UCF. They first met in 2011 when BYU was an independent. UCF was a member of Conference USA. Then 2014, a Thursday night showcase game that was expected to be another undefeated BYU rolling into Orlando, but the week prior, Taysom Hill fell to an injury against Utah State, and then Christian Stewart made his first career start. BYU lost an OT, then that Boca Raton Bowl, as you mentioned, and now these two programs square off as Big 12 foes. And what's great, too, for BYU is that they're atop the Big 12 standings, 4-0 in the conference right now. And I think that the common theme with this team this week, Matt, is that despite being 7-0, this team feels like they can get a lot better.
Yeah, I loved hearing from Jay Hill earlier in the week, too, talk about how they had an outstanding day of practice. I think it was, Tuesday night, an outstanding week of practice. But yet he also felt like, hey, maybe we were humbled a little bit defensively where we were just getting showered with praise to start the season, and then we didn't execute our jobs properly against Oklahoma State, and, we got to clean that up, and that's a good problem to have. Here was Jay Hill earlier in the week talking about the importance of slowing down what is going to be obviously a strong rushing attack from UCF.
It's a complicated scheme. We got to be at our best. They do a lot of good things. They do a lot of different things that we haven't really necessarily seen this year. So we're going to have to be assignment sound. We're going to have to limit those couple big plays that we gave up last week. Obviously, that was a big deal in last week's game. So I like the challenge. I think our guys will be absolutely ready. And, yeah, it's a good challenge for us.
I like to hear that from Jay Hill, that they're ready for the challenge. Because last week, Mitch, it was a surprise, was it not, to be assignment not sound, for lack of a better term, on several plays. And then going into that final 17-play drive, I had the full confidence in this defense that they would make the stop. They didn't. Did that surprise you? And do you think this defense can rebound from what we saw last week?
That did surprise me. To give up a 17-play drive to Oklahoma State, that was a huge surprise. But I'm willing to give BYU's defense, which has been outstanding this year, one mulligan, one game to say, okay, Oklahoma State coming out of a bye week, one of the best X's and O's coaches in college football, Mike Gundy, he had a crazy plan that you didn't see coming. Okay, we'll make an exception there. It's not the type of trait that you want to hear from a championship football team, but hey, we'll give you one exception because, look, a lot of these same guys were part of defenses that were near the bottom nationally in college football. There's moments where it might revert back to some of the old tendencies potentially, but today I'm not willing to make any sort of, well, okay, that's acceptable because, as you noted earlier, Matt, this UCF team is clearly one-dimensional with this quarterback, Jakari Brown. So BYU better be dialed in to stopping the run. If you do that, I think BYU wins comfortably in this game. We'll get to our score predictions a little bit later, but they've got to be dialed in and be that run defense that we saw against SMU. And SMU's 6-1 in the country. Kevin Jennings is running all over the place, and the Mustangs have been an outstanding offense. I want to see that defense show up today. And if that's the case, BYU should have a pretty good day here in Florida.
Let's take our first break, Mitch. On the other side, let's talk about something that should give you hope going into this game, and that's the other side of the football. There's been a spotlight on the defense, but offensively, there's some really interesting statistics that make me think this offense is improving and can win you a shootout if needs be. We'll discuss that and more. It's extended pregame coverage right here on your legacy home of the BYU Cougars, KSL News Radio.
BYU, Central Florida.
Jake will set to throw and gun it on the odds. Caught! The 5, the touchdown! Caleb Marion left side!
Special extended BYU pregame on KSL News Radio.
Good morning, Cougar Nation. We are up bright and early here in Orlando, Florida, getting you ready for the Cougs and the Knights. Another Big 12 battle. BYU already doubled up their win total in the Big 12 conference from a season ago, Mitch. Who would have thought? I don't think any of you out there listening, including myself, would have thought at this point they would be 7-0. And look, defensively, Mitch, they played really well beside that Oklahoma State game. And also, quickly, this extended pregame coverage brought to you by UCCU. Love where you bank. Defensively, they've been really good, minus the Oklahoma State game. That was a setback, but I think you and I believe that this defense, what we saw last week, is not who they're going to be going forward. It's hard to be at your best every single week. I expect to bounce back. But offensively, this is where things get really interesting. They have some very impressive numbers that I don't think we're talking about enough, Mitch. First off, BYU in conference play 34 or more points in all 4 games. So they're scoring at a high level. That allows the defense a better margin of error. Offensive line only allowed 6 sacks in 7 games. Red zone offense converting 92% of the time. What do you make of this BYU offense? Because last year offensively they were not very good, but in conference play they're really showing to be, at worst, a middle of the conference offense. But they're probably a top 4, top 6 offense right now in the Big 12?
I think they're probably top 3, top 2 maybe, because the way they're playing in Big 12 play, they're number 1 scoring offense in Big 12 games this season. And that's why when we were talking earlier about, I'll give a mulligan to the defense. Hey, maybe that SMU game was just a mulligan. I think we get too hung up on how that offense played against SMU, only scoring 18 points in that win. Look, that's not the norm now of this BYU team. The other 6 games, BYU is consistently putting up 35, 38 points. You're in that territory every week, you're going to win a lot of ball games. So BYU's offense, yes, it's not these statistical video game numbers that we knew of BYU football in the golden era when Ty Detmer's throwing for 550 and they're going off for 50 points a game. No, it's not that. But, man, they're efficient. And when they need to be and the game is on the line, BYU and this offense are getting it done. You had a good question to Aaron Roderick this week about Jake Retzlaff and the 2-minute drill. And Jake's been, outstanding on that front. And I think that Jake is someone that, he just found a way to deliver. And this was Retzlaff or Aaron Roderick on Jake Retzlaff in that 2-minute drill.
I don't know what it is. He's got a good feel for the game. He's a really gutsy guy. He doesn't shy away from that moment. He thrives in it. And he had a great 2-minute drill against Oklahoma State last year to get us to overtime. And this year he was able to finish the deal. But, he has a good knack for it.
This year alone, Mitch, he's had 2-minute drill situations where it has yielded game-winning drives. That SMU game that you referenced, let's not forget how critical that final offensive drive was to take the lead, and then the defense sealed the deal. And then, of course, against Oklahoma State, same situation, right? They get the game-winning drive, and then the defense has to make a play, although it was much easier against Oklahoma State. So he's 2-0 pretty much this season when it comes to we have to have points here. Jake and the offense take us down in the fourth quarter. He delivered. Another interesting note, too, about this offense, Mitch. You think back to that Oklahoma State game, 38 points. They could have had 50 if they take care of the football. 2 of those turnovers came in scoring position. The Falau-Rapati interception, that could have at least been a field goal. Maybe that leads to a touchdown. And then they were deep in Polk's territory when Jake threw his interception. And that's the thing Aaron Roderick noted earlier in the week, Mitch, that this offense, if they take care of the football, they'll be in a better position.
Well, the turnovers in the first half, 2 of them I can do better for the team. The Hail Mary, we're probably too far away to try a Hail Mary right there. If it's to win the game, it's probably worth it. But right before the half, there's probably more bad than good that can happen right there, and I probably should have just ran the ball and gone into the half, and then put Falau in a tough spot too on one of those turnovers. They played a different defense than what we expected, and we probably should have had a way to check out of that play for Falau. But we did a lot of good things though. But that's the main thing, is taking better care of the football this week is going to be really important.
That will be huge for BYU today against UCF. UCF has not been the greatest defense this year. 9 interceptions, 9 sacks, a little bit underperforming on the pressures that they're getting to the quarterback. So, again, I think this is an opportunity for BYU to come into a part of the country where they don't typically go. They're going to come here more often because UCF's a member of the Big 12 Conference. But really, there's so many things that you look at in this matchup and say, UCF's not really a good football team. BYU is getting slept on because I feel like too many people are looking at BYU and just saying, they're not talented enough. You look at the 24/7 Sports talent composite ratings, BYU coming into the season, and that's a reference to like stars and recruiting rankings. BYU, worst roster in the Big 12, 16th. UCF, 5th as far as talent composite recruiting stars. And, BYU is playing well above their weight, but I think that, BYU's got a lot more talent than people give them credit for. And if that shows up today, and then they, fine-tune the execution, avoid those turnovers that Aaron Roddick was saying, this again should be a game BYU wins comfortably. Yet, despite all that and the positivity I think we're saying about this BYU team, prognosticators have BYU earlier in the week as an underdog. This thing's been fluctuating back and forth, which kind of blows me away, Matt, because, again, UCF's 3-4. They've been playing some bad football.
What you touched on is so interesting in college football, Mitch, because this BYU team, and it's also frustrating, this BYU team, it's sort of disrespectful they're 11 when you consider their strength of record, teams they're beating. SMU is competing at a high level in the ACC. Kansas State, some people are still picking Kansas State to win the Big 12, and that doesn't bother me so much. That team's talented. They could very well do it. But based off merit, you're in a power conference. Your non-conference win is one of the better ones out there. I mean, they should be top 10. And then you have national voices in the sport, Nick Saban and those other in Game Day, talking about how maybe the Big 12, even if they do win the league, they won't be one of the top 4 seeds and they'll only get one. Like, this is ridiculous that we're having these conversations, and for BYU to be a part of it and to still be disrespected, it's really frustrating. I thought the narrative would shift more than it has, being in the Big 12, but yet it's like the ACC is widely seen, from a national perspective I'm speaking on, as the third best league. I don't know how you feel that way. I don't know where you see that. Florida State has been an abomination. Clemson's bounced back and they've been nice, but from top to bottom, I think the Big 12 has been better than the ACC, and yet no one talks about the ACC like they do the Big 12, and no one talks about a Clemson or a Miami like they do BYU, and yet BYU, I think, has a better resume up to this point than either Miami or Clemson, Mitch.
It's just crazy how a close win in this league, it's like, how good are you really? Whereas in the SEC, you win a close game against Mississippi State, tough win, hard fought, well-deserved. SEC football, Arizona State blew the doors off that terrible Mississippi State team. Arkansas, who beat Tennessee, and Tennessee beat Bama. Oklahoma State beat that Arkansas team. I know that's transitive property stuff. We don't want to get into that because college football really is week to week. But you're right. I mean, BYU, I was saying it earlier, on Cougar Nation, we hold it down Monday nights on Cougar Nation 6-7. I felt BYU should be 7 or 8 in the AP Top 25 poll. I think far too many pollsters are looking at BYU's logo and then saying, they don't have the recruiting stars like this team, so if they played on a neutral field, they would just lose by 3 touchdowns. oh, are we now in this game where it's just solely based on recruiting rankings? And this is coming from a guy who loves the recruiting rankings. But I don't subscribe to that. You got to let the games be played between the lines. And BYU, they might not have the aesthetically pleasing recruiting stars roster, but this team is executing at a high level. Their culture is shining through in these games. And, Jake Retzloff, he's not your prototypical perfect quarterback, but man, he is getting it done when he needs to. And when you've got a quarterback that is clutch in a 2-minute setting, man, that's a nice dynamic to have for a team that feels like they could pull off some magic this year. So look, hey, keep doubting BYU. Because I love an underdog BYU much better than a heavily favored BYU. So keep it coming, because they'll just keep proving people wrong.
Someone who also, a big part of the success, Mitch, wide receiver Darius Lassiter. You caught up with him earlier in the week. We'll have the star, the hero of the Oklahoma State game, Darius Lassiter, next.
Who would have believed a 7-0 BYU Cougar football team heading into the home stretch?
Martin shaking off tackle, stiff arm, 5-4, 3-2-1, touchdown!
BYU has the belief and the kind of schedule that could lead this squad to a Big 12 title game.
Yeah, the team's really bought in on trying to get better. Guys got an early start on UCF. The mentality was, like we always say, stay humble and stay hungry.
This is KSL's special extended pregame coverage. BYU, UCF, brought to you by UCCU. Love where you bank. Here are Mitch Harper and Matt Baiamonte on KSL News Radio, 102.7 FM and 1160 AM.
Welcome back to extended pregame coverage. BYU versus UCF. First time as Big 12 foes. Mitch Harper, Matt Baiamonte coming to you from Orlando, Florida, near the Bounce House. It's a rockin' place here in Florida.
Why is it called the Bounce House? I've always wondered that.
The student section gets bouncing.
Oh.
Yeah, it's nothing crazy. Honestly, it should be the Space House, because they pride themselves with NASA, and I love their space uniforms. The future of college football apparently is here. Well, I don't know if the future looks too bright at 3 and 4, and people are unloading their tickets left and right, and I think BYU fans are gobbling them up. And I think those Cougar fans are going to be bouncing today for this guy, Darius Lassiter. Had the game-winning touchdown grab last week against Oklahoma State. He's playing the best football of his college football career. Caught up with Darius earlier in the week. BYU football game week. The Cougars getting ready to take on the UCF Knights, and joining me now is BYU wide receiver Darius Lassiter. Darius, I got to ask, with the game winner against Oklahoma State, what was the reaction with, like, when you got on your phone, saw the reaction, the responses? How fun was that, and how much was your phone blowing up over the weekend?
Yeah, it was a lot. It was a lot of notifications and just texts, just congratulations, and it was a lot of emotions, a lot of happy, a lot of sad, and then just a lot of just. You just expect yourself to kind of do that. So emotions was all over the place. But yeah, it was a great feeling just to get my first game winner under my belt.
It was pretty cool when I saw you. I was waiting in the post-game press conference room, which you later went into, but you had a moment on Instagram Live with your brothers. How cool was that to kind of share that moment with them who weren't in the stands, I don't believe, but you got to share that on social media?
Yeah, those guys, those are my biggest fans, and they know what I've been through as a football player, and they just want me to succeed at the highest level, and just to finally see it all just kind of just happening right now, and it's just kind of a big moment for them, and they just want me just to enjoy the moment and just live in it.
And it's been a couple great moments. This past 3 games, 3 of your best 5 games as a receiver in college. It's some big-time receiving yard totals. What do you kind of attribute this recent string of success that you've been having with kind of setting some career highs?
It's just to be consistent, just to kind of just build on each and every week. Last week was good, but it just wasn't good enough, and that's just the mindset that I have for me as a player, and that's just how everybody on the team just looks at it for me. They know that it's a bigger step that I can take. I know we're in game 8, but I still just feel like I haven't played the best of my ability yet, and so hopefully this week I can go out there and prove that this week.
It kind of feels like a theme with this team, where everyone across the board feels like yeah, you might be 7-0, but there's still kind of another gear or two to this team.
Yeah, on offense, we know that each week is a Super Bowl for us, and that's just how we just look at it. And we know we didn't play our best, not even quite, because we know what this offense can look like at full power when everything is just clicking for us, because that's why we come out here and do the reps and everything like that. So everybody tells us every day, yeah, we should be proud of the win and everything like that, but it's a lot of stuff out there that we didn't do good, and that just shows that what this offense is capable of, and the level that when we get there, it's gonna be crazy.
What do you feel like is an area that can improve?
Everything. We're not just out there throwing for 400 yards and just running for 250 every game. So I feel like once we can do that on a consistent basis, I think that offense would be there.
I'm curious, Darius, and I probably know the answer, but I want to ask you. I mean, after BYU, do you want to pursue the NFL? Because I know you had a brother or have a brother that's played in the NFL. Is that something that's a goal of yours?
Yeah, I've been in college this long. I think I should try to go reach that dream. Yeah, it's kind of just always been something on my mind since I was young. Then also having brothers to play the game, and then my dad as well. So football's just kind of just been around me. So.
How young was football? Did it kind of get to you? I mean, was it just from the moment you were born because of your dad?
No, I really didn't start playing football until I was about like 13 or so. So he didn't want us to play when we were young.
Interesting. I didn't realize that. And how much have you been enjoying this season and the kind of the relationship and chemistry you've developed with Jake?
Yeah, I'm loving this season. I mean, I feel like when anybody you still undefeated in this time of the year, it's always great, and that just always keep a mood on your face, whether you're out there making a lot of plays or not. So, and then my chemistry with Jake just kind of continues to go up each and every week. It just kind of shows the trust level factor that he has in me, just to make plays down the field and things like that. So, as the weeks keep going, hopefully that just continues to go up.
How impressed have you been with Jake's growth? I mean, everyone in this team has grown a lot since the beginning of the season, but Jake in particular, who faced a lot of outside noise from people and criticism, how impressed have you been being in the trenches with him?
Yeah, playing quarterback at BYU is hard because a lot of people just have opinions of what things should look like, and I feel like in that case, if that was the case, everybody would be here playing it. So Jake was chose to be in this position for a reason, and he got all 10 other guys on offense behind him, and everybody that's not in that starting lineup as well. So I'm impressed, especially after last year, after going 0-4, and people was just kind of just trying to kick him to the curb. He didn't let that get to him and defy him as a quarterback and as a person. And he just continues to work each and every day, and the strides that he's taking and the confidence and the swag, you kind of just see it just showing up on Saturdays.
Where do you feel like you've had the biggest growth this year? I mean, I know it's always tough to kind of talk about yourself because you want to do more, but where do you feel like you have improved the most?
I feel like my leadership-wise, not even my ability on the field, because I just kind of feel like that just kind of comes with it, but the better you can make your teammates and make the people around you, that's just going to make the team 10 times better.
What is this locker room like? I mean, we see the cut, and we see the clips of you guys dancing, celebrating after wins. But on a day like today, what's kind of like the mood? Are you guys talkative, always interacting? Like, what's the kind of the vibe of this team day in, day out?
Yeah, especially coming off after a win, everybody's up, juiced up, amped up, ready to go out there and get another one because we know the feeling that it feels, and it feels great to win. And that's what we want to keep doing each and every game. And we kind of just this year we've been closer as a team than we were last year, and you kind of can see it just. O-linemen and receivers just kind of getting together, D-linemen, cornerbacks hanging out, and things like that. So I feel like the locker room is really close this year. We don't really have anybody that's just kind of just drifting right in their own part. I feel like all 120-some guys are just bought into this ultimate goal that we got.
Any tweaks to the East Coast travel this year compared to last? I know you guys went to West Virginia last year. Has there been anything different in preparation? I know you guys leave Thursday, but anything different this year?
It's hard for me to say because last year I didn't make that trip because I got hurt. So I think everything, though, since me being last year and then kind of just knowing what to expect, I think everything's the same as last year. We just kind of tempoed everything down just so we can kind of get our bodies back under us, and we kind of just changed our sleep schedule so we can kind of already adapt to it. And right when we get there, we're not just up, laggy, and on game day, we're ready to go.
You ever played in Florida before?
Nah, I haven't. This is going to be my first time.
So it should be a good time. Any thoughts on UCF's defense? Anything that's kind of characteristics that stand out about their secondary?
Yeah, they disguise a lot of things on defense. So we know what coverages they like to run, but it's kind of hard to just choose and know which one they're going to do just because they're so good at disguising coverages. So I feel like that's what they do the best, and I think it's going to be a good challenge for this offense to step up to.
Well, Darius, congrats on that game winner, and congrats on all the success you've been having this season and this team. So best of luck this week, and we'll talk down the road.
Yeah, thank you.
And that's BYU wide receiver Darius Lassiter here on extended pregame coverage, BYU and UCF here on KSL News Radio. All right, taking a timeout. More after this. We'll get a conference check-in. Mitch Harper, Matt Baiamonte coming to you from Orlando, Florida for extended pregame, BYU and UCF, right here on KSL News Radio.
BYU, Central Florida.
Jake will set to throw and gun it on the odds. Caught! The 5, the touchdown! Keelan Marion left side!
Special extended BYU pregame on KSL News Radio.
Good morning again. We're still going. Extended pregame coverage brought to you by UCCU. Love where you bank. Good stuff with Darius Lassiter. I would not have thought coming into this season, Mitch, that Darius would be the leading receiver at this point. I thought it would have been Chase. Darius is just targeted a lot more than Chase. Chase has probably been more reliable. I can't even, maybe there's been one Chase Roberts drop that comes to mind. Darius has had significantly more drops than Chase, but Darius has also made some really significant plays this season. It's a good problem to have, honestly. If the defense wants to focus on Darius, that might open up for Chase, but Darius has really stepped up, and to have two really solid number one type receivers in your offense. And can I also shout out Fessy, who we'll have later in the program. He's developed these guys really nicely, and I like that the rotation is tight. You're not seeing 9, 10 wide receivers playing. Even some guys who I think are really good, Parker Kingston, they don't get a lot of reps because it's always Chase. It's always Darius. Keelan's been stepping in for Cody Epps. I like that this is a tight rotation with these wide receivers that are playing at a high level.
It kind of reminds me of 2019 when they had Aleva Hifo, Talon Shumway, and Micah Simon. Just kind of rolled with those three guys play after play. And for the players right now, Roberts, Lassiter, and Marion, they probably love that. I mean, they want to be on the field in the critical situations. Last week, Chase comes up with a huge fourth down grab that then sets up the Jake Retzlaff run and of course Darius's catch. So yeah, BYU's wide receivers are playing good, but they can get better. And we'll touch on more of that on these receivers coming up a little bit later in the show. Kickoff's coming up 1:30 between BYU and UCF, and that honestly kicks off the Big 12 schedule this week, Matt. It's an interesting slate as we check in on the conference, the Big 12. 1:30 BYU and UCF right here on KSL News Radio. At the same time, I'm kind of intrigued by this game. Oklahoma State, see the follow-up act, and also Baylor, who you were talking about last week as maybe a potential upset team over Tech. They got it done in Lubbock. So I'm curious to see how that game plays out 1:30 on Big 12 now.
Baylor is surging, and maybe BYU caught them at the right time because they were still pretty fresh into the identity change. They brought in Sawyer Robertson, the week before? Did he start against, it was Air Force the week before BYU? He looked pretty good against BYU, and then he's just continued to get better and better. Statistically speaking, Mitch, he's one of the best quarterbacks in the Big 12. Would not surprise me at all if Baylor wins this game against Oklahoma State. I think that road win, when it's all said and done, is going to look a lot better. I don't know if Baylor's going to be an 8-win football team by any means, but they could be 6-6, get to a bowl game and possibly save Aranda's job with their play down the stretch there. Baylor's an improved football team. That was not a fluke last week against Texas Tech. I think they're going to be a hard out going forward.
And on the flip side, Texas Tech, they go to Cowtown, to Fort Worth, to take on the TCU Horned Frogs, who Cougar fans appreciate the efforts from TCU last week, taking down Utah in Salt Lake.
I would say so. Appreciate the effort. Putting it mildly.
Tech at TCU, 1:30 on Fox. Who do you see in that one? It feels like a important game for both teams to maybe bounce back and
I like
continue
Tech to bounce back. TCU, TCU's not a good football team. Look, Arizona got blasted by Colorado last week. I guess the dots I'm trying to connect here is that Utah is not a good football team, Mitch.
Yeah.
So just because a team went in and beat Utah up at Rice-Eccles Stadium, I don't think like previous years you can take anything from that. I think Utah is in shambles. Look, their offensive coordinator quit in the middle of the season. They've got a true freshman quarterback. They've got injuries, and their defense is not playing up to standard. Like, TCU went and beat a mediocre Utah team. That doesn't say anything to me about TCU. I think Tech's the better football team.
Yeah, Utah takes on Houston today, 5 p.m. Big 12 now on ESPN+.
If they lose this game, sound the alarm, Mitch.
Yeah, it's interesting. Houston, they got blown out by Kansas last week. Their starting quarterback, though, that got the win over TCU, he got banged up early in that game against Kansas. Ian Chris, he's expected to play today, at least reportedly. So if he, pulls some of the magic that he had against TCU, man, you're right, though. If Utah loses this game, you wonder if there will be much buy-in leading up to that BYU game, or are guys going to be wandering and just kind of giving up on the season? I think Utah, this is do or die for Utah today against Houston. West Virginia takes on Arizona in Tucson, 5 p.m. Two teams desperately looking for a win. Kansas at Kansas State, 6 p.m. on ESPN2. Cincinnati at Colorado, 2 3-1 teams in the Big 12, 8:15 on ESPN. You buying either of these teams, Cincinnati or Colorado?
This might be a surprise, but I buy Cincinnati a little more than Colorado. I think Cincinnati, they are not as dependent on one person on one side of the football. Colorado, they need Shooter to play like a first-round NFL draft pick offensively, and he, to his credit, has done that a lot this season. And Colorado's defense is much improved. But Cincinnati, I think they've been more consistent this year on both sides of the football. I would not be surprised if Cincinnati wins this football game. This is an elimination game, honestly. Cincinnati and Colorado are still in the mix to compete for a Big 12 championship game. Whoever loses this is out, because I just don't see BYU and or Iowa State dropping 3 conference games the rest of the year. Someone might get into that game at 10-2. But you can't lose this one, Cincinnati or Colorado, and expect to get there. Colorado's got some really tough games coming up as well. So I kind of feel like Colorado's going to self-eliminate by season's end. I don't totally buy them, whereas Cincinnati, I don't know. There's something there with Cincinnati. They're playing at a high level, and I like to see a team like Cincinnati have some success, because you don't want those 4 original teams to come in and just not be factoring in to where it's like, the additions, it's whatever. Those original 4 outside of Houston, they've been really solid additions for this conference, and Cincinnati is playing like they did at the end of the Luke Fickell era.
And those original additions, BYU, UCF, Houston, Cincinnati, if you didn't have them on board, you don't have a league. So they were so significant to the stability of the Big 12. And yes, it's good to see BYU and Cincinnati, 2 of 6 teams with 1 loss or less in the Big 12 conference this week.
Who is out from the slate today? Because Iowa State's on a bye.
Yep.
Who from this slate is out? Like Utah and Houston, those teams are out.
Yep.
West Virginia's probably out. Who else here is, or maybe a better question is, who else here is still in the mix in your eyes outside of Cincinnati and Colorado?
I'll say Kansas State. I think they get a win over Kansas. They always dominate that series. And I will say Texas Tech stays alive, but their defense is terrible. That should be a classic Big 12 high-scoring, high 50s game today in Fort Worth. These teams can continue to win, and then, of course, the winner of the Cincinnati-Colorado game survives and advances. I'll say Colorado. I think I give them the slight edge in that game, but it's good football. Big 12, it's toss-up football. I think anyone that's watching this league can appreciate how competitive and talented and competitive this thing is.
Yeah, let's take a break, Mitch. On the other side, let's get a preview with UCF insider Brandon Hellwig. We'll break down the Knights more in depth on the other side.
The undefeated BYU Cougars are tracking toward the Big 12 championship game.
The snap, the ride, the keep by Retzloff, the touchdown!
And possibly a berth into the college football playoffs.
Jet sweep, cut up field, get in for 6, touchdown! LJ with the TD.
BYU, the team nobody predicted, led by the quarterback no one believed in, now ranked number 11 in the nation. Before Arlington or the postseason, 5 teams stand in the way, starting with the UCF Knights.
Their record does not speak for how good of a football team they are. They're probably the best 3-4 football team in the country, and I know they're going to play us really tough, especially since they'll be at home.
You're listening to special extended pregame coverage. BYU, UCF, sponsored by UCCU. Love where you bank. Our hosts are Mitch Harper and Matt Baiamonte on Utah's legacy home of the Cougars, KSL News Radio.
Hour number 2 is off and running of extended pregame coverage. BYU and UCF. Mitch Harper, Matt Baiamonte with you from Orlando, Florida. And it's time now to get an insider look on the opponent this week. Joined now by Brandon Hellwig, publisher of UCFsports.com, part of the Rivals Network. He's been holding it down covering UCF since 1999. I crossed paths with Brandon back in 2011, years ago, doing a podcast interview with him, and it's kind of fun to see the evolution of these two programs over the years. So I caught up with Brandon to get a look at the Knights. Like BYU, I feel like UCF was the program that was most excited to join this conference. Last year, of course, BYU, UCF, Houston, Cincinnati joined the Big 12. Now the Four Corners are into the league as well for a 16-team conference. And joining me now to discuss the UCF Knights is publisher at UCFsports.com, part of the Rivals Network. You can follow him on X at UCF Sports. It's Brandon Hellwig, publisher of UCF Sports. Brandon, we go back a while. We were talking before this interview. We did an interview back in 2011 when BYU was an independent. I believe UCF, it was getting ready for, I think it was the AAC, I believe, or maybe it was Conference USA.
Yeah,
and now these two teams are in the Big 12.
Yeah, it was technically still Conference USA back then. UCF would officially join the American a couple years later. But yeah, I remember that game. That was a fun atmosphere for UCF. I can't remember the score. I know it was pretty close. I think they lost by a touchdown or something, but incredible venue, Lavelle Edwards Stadium, beautiful setting. It was on a Friday night, like a lot of those early independent games were, I know, for you guys. So it was a great trip out there, and I'm looking forward to this matchup. But I guess we get to go out there next year because that's when UCF visits BYU.
Yeah, I love that there's a lot of energy between these two programs for being in the Big 12 because I'll just say it. I mean, being next to Utah and Salt Lake, they weren't energized to be in the Big 12, and they stumbled out of the gates into the Big 12 conference. These two programs are really, inspired to be in this league because this is what they've been craving for so many years. Now, BYU, unexpected success being at 7-0. I think a lot of people thought more of this UCF team coming into this season, 8th in the preseason Big 12 poll, but kind of struggles once again mid-season 3-4. What should we make of this team right now, Brandon?
Yeah, I think Gus Malzahn, head coach, and the fan base, everyone's kind of disappointed so far to look to see how this season has gone so far. I think when you looked at the Big 12 coming into it, I think it was one of those leagues where anybody could win it. Everyone was talking Utah, they're talking Kansas State, Oklahoma State. As we've seen it, the tables have kind of turned a little bit on the so-called lower teams that were predicted, such as BYU, are the ones outperforming teams like Utah that were clearly the preseason favorite. But for UCF, there was hopes that they would be a dark horse, to compete for the championship. I mean, last season, UCF was the only team amongst those four newcomers to reach a bowl game. I mean, they barely got there at 6-6, but they did qualify. BYU, Cincinnati, and Houston did not. And for Gus Malzahn, he acted, I mean, when I look at last season, I think UCF did okay considering the circumstances. Starting quarterback, John Rice Plumlee, he missed several games in the middle of the conference season. They were on a 5-game losing streak last year. It sounds kind of familiar because that's happening this year as well. But all things considered, UCF finished strongly last season. They made it to a bowl game, but for Gus Malzahn, longtime head coach, Auburn for years, that was his first losing season because UCF would go on to lose the bowl game to Georgia Tech. And, as soon as that season was over, he said that was unacceptable. He's never had a losing season as a head coach. So he went out, he made some changes at the coordinator spot, although he's always been his own offensive coordinator and called plays. He brought in Tim Harris Jr., who had coached with him previously at UCF. He was at Miami for a year, brought him back, gave him the offensive coordinator tag. Then he brought in Ted Roof to overhaul the UCF defense, which when you look at last season, the offense wasn't really the issue. It was the defense. UCF could not stop the run. They did not have, very good talent or depth on that side of the ball. So we brought in Ted Roof to kind of overhaul things on that side of the ball. And then, you know how it is, these, this new age of college football is what I think Gus Malzahn calls it, with transfer portal. You can hopefully, if you play your cards right, you can turn around a team in just one offseason. So UCF went all in on the transfer portal this past offseason. First and foremost, quarterback. They lost John Rice Plumlee to graduation, and then they brought in KJ Jefferson, who was a familiar name for those who follow college football. He had been at Arkansas the previous 5 years and was a starter in the SEC. Last season was a little bit of a down year for him at Arkansas. They had a new offensive coordinator, but when he was with Kendall Briles, who is now at TCU at Sonny Dykes, when he was with him for a couple years previously, he was one of the top quarterbacks in the SEC. So, between his addition, some other additions, particularly on defense, UCF was hoping or really much planned to be right in this Big 12 race. And I mean, and that's where, if you want to talk about the problems of this season, that's where it starts. UCF, like many teams, opened the season with an FCS opponent. For UCF, it was New Hampshire. Yeah, you look at the score. What was the final? It was a blowout. Obviously, UCF won 57-3, but it was alarming in that KJ Jefferson struggled against an FCS opponent. Just he cannot throw the ball accurately. Because probably UCF is playing an FCS team, he should have thrown multiple interceptions in that game if it was D1 talent facing against them. He couldn't hit the side of a barn from a passing standpoint. He just looked terrible. He's always been a running threat. He's a bigger guy. He's harder to bring down, but it was clear that he had gained some weight since his Arkansas days. And, it's kind of hard to know exactly where someone is weight wise because, on these rosters, they kind of put on there what they want you to think. But he had an arrest due to some unpaid tickets, speeding tickets, back when he was in Fayetteville, or it was an arrest because I think it was over the threshold where he had to be arrested, whatever the legal thing was. He had to go back to Fayetteville, and I think it was in May, and turn himself in and do his fine or whatever. I think he weighed about 270 in that booking, and they're not fudging the weight. So it just hasn't worked out. And as the games went by and he struggled. Now, give him credit. He did play a little bit better the next 2 weeks, including the comeback win at TCU. UCF had to, come back from a huge first half deficit and rally to win in the final minute. But ever since then, it's been a struggle. And so UCF has switched quarterbacks. He started a 17-year-old a couple weeks ago at Cincinnati. His name's EJ Colson. He really shouldn't even be here. He was a class of 2025 commit. And, was able to load up on credits and was able to graduate early. And so he arrived. So he started, he only played a couple series. It was kind of hampered because there were some turnovers, although it wasn't his fault on those drives. And then they went with Ja'Cory Brown, who was a late quarterback addition to the room this past offseason. He had been in Miami the last couple of years. He kind of got out of Dodge when it was realized, Cam Ward was going to run that show down there. So he transferred up to UCF. And so they've rolled with him the last couple of weeks for the most part, including this past weekend at Iowa State. But it's been a struggle with him too, at least passing the ball. He's an excellent runner, rushed for 100+ yards this past week at Iowa State, but just really struggled passing the ball. So the story goes for UCF, it's quarterback. That's been the biggest issue. Well, I think is why they're sitting at 3-4 right now.
Talking with UCFsports.com publisher Brandon Helwig here on KSL News Radio as we get ready for BYU and UCF in Orlando. You mentioned Ja'Cory Brown. He did look dynamic on the ground, passing the football. As you noted, there was a bit of a struggle, but did the offense change much with him compared to, how it looked and operated with KJ Jefferson?
Not really. It's Gus Malzahn, he's always looking for that Cam Newton, Nick Marshall kind of mold. The quarterback, he wants the quarterback to be able to run the ball, which, Ja'Cory Brown did a great job of. I'm pulling up his stats right here, and he had multiple home run type rushing play. He finished with 154 rushing yards. The problem is he couldn't pass. I mean, there was wide open receivers. There was even late in the game at UCF. They should have won the game. There was multiple opportunities. They had a lead late in the fourth quarter. You get one more first down, you probably win the game. You have to give the ball back to them. They had a bad punt that was a touchback. They tried to pin him deep. They couldn't do it. And there was, on the other side of the ball defense, there was a bad pass interference, which was kind of controversial, which set Iowa State up for the late score. So they had multiple opportunities to win that game and just couldn't. But if he could have passed the ball even marginally well, or just average, UCF wins that game. But his passing numbers were just terrible. I'm looking him up right now. He was 8 of 20 with 2 interceptions for just 62 yards passing. And there was a wheel route type screen pass to RJ Harvey, the running back. If he hits it late in that fourth quarter, there was no one in front of him. That was probably a touchdown, and he threw it way over his head. There was no one around him. So that's the thing that Gus said this week. They got to work on that passing game. I mean, obviously they work on it every week. I guess they're going to pay a little bit more attention to it. So that's kind of the question we all have. They say they're starting Ja'Cory Brown this week. Yeah, we'll see what happens with that. If he struggles passing early, could they go back to EJ Colson, who is said to, even though he's young, he's said to be the better passer. So it's kind of a big question mark what we're going to see offensively this Saturday.
On the ground, though, there can't be a question about the talent of RJ Harvey. I mean, I'm curious, Brandon, is someone like yourself who's been covering UCF since 1999, and you've basically been there the whole time since they've been an FBS program. Is he the best running back to come out of UCF? I know they've had some good ones. Kevin Smith comes to mind too, but is he right there?
Yeah, he's right there. I mean, right now I think you have to give the nod at this point to Kevin Smith, who in 2007 nearly broke Barry Sanders' single season NCAA rushing record. He needed a big game in the bowl game. Couldn't quite get there, but he's second national, he's second overall all time in the NCAA record book. But RJ Harvey honestly is right up there with them, which is quite a remarkable story because he was a high school quarterback. He initially went to Virginia to play quarterback. Not a lot of colleges, saw him as a quarterback in college. At UCF, that was back when Josh Heupel was still down here. He recruited him to play running back. So he went to Virginia for, I think, one fall. And then by spring, they were moving him to running back. And he's like, if I was going to play running back, I would have gone to UCF. So he transferred to UCF and really just the improvement he's made over his past 4 years here. And he's overcome multiple obstacles. He had an ACL injury, back in 21. He was on pace to be the starting running back then, and had to start from square one the next year after, overcoming the knee injury. And so, yeah, he can just do so much. There's times where you think he's going to get tackled for a loss, and he kind of jukes and jives, makes some guys miss, and before you know it, he's off to the races. He had one of those, a couple of those home run plays this past weekend against Iowa State. So they have to be more balanced offensively. They've got a good running game. The offensive line, which had struggled a little bit the previous two, played a lot better against Iowa State. They just got to keep defenses honest by being able to execute some semblance of a passing game.
How would you assess how the UCF defense has performed? 9 interceptions so far this season, and only 8 sacks. It's a little bit of a low number, but how would you assess maybe the defensive performance through 7 games?
I'd say they are improving week to week. Pass rush has been a big issue early in the season. They were able to get to Rocco Becht a little bit this past week, although he slipped contain and he hurt him with his feet quite a bit. I mean, that's probably really the story why Iowa State won the game, is Rocco Becht was able to make some guys miss and elude the rush and kind of make some plays with his feet. But I'd say they're improving week to week. I'd say they're better than they were last year. It's just and I said Ted Roof, he's that name might be familiar with those who follow college football. He's been around the block in college football. He was in Oklahoma. They've had a couple of years. A long time ago, he was the head coach at Duke in the mid 2000s. He's been all over, every conference I think he's coaching for the most part. But he has improved that side of the ball. They got some, like I said earlier, they got some guys in the transfer portal who are big time playmakers. But they are playing better. But one issue to note is, one of their top defensive ends, Nigel Kelly, he left the game against Iowa State. For some reason, they were slipping and sliding on that turf at Iowa State. It was long grass. I don't know what it was, but, wrong cleats. And there was a lot of guys sliding, and it looked like he twisted his knee. It looked pretty serious at the time, although Gus said this week there's a chance it wasn't as bad as they feared. So it sounds like it's some sort of sprain. There's a chance he could come back this week. So it'll be, they'll need all hands on deck. So that's one of the injury issues to watch for UCF this year. But against Iowa State, they were on the field a lot. They played, I think Iowa State had like 99 plays. Just there were some pick sixes, and there were some plays that just they were not off the field for very long. So I think that kind of led to some of the struggles last week as well.
Any other personnel notes that you're monitoring going into this matchup on the UCF side?
That's probably the main one. John Walker was one of their top defensive tackles. He was initially going to, be a big factor. He hadn't played all season. We initially thought he would maybe come back after 4 or 5 weeks. Gus Malzahn confirmed earlier this week he had to have surgery on his knee, so he's done for the year. But that's probably the biggest one at this point is Nigel Kelly, to see if he comes back and plays this week.
Last thing for you, Brandon. Again, follow Brandon on X at UCF Sports and check out his bylines on UCFsports.com, part of the Rivals Network. I'm curious, what's been the biggest adjustment to the Big 12 for UCF? Year two, just like BYU, Kalani talked about roster retention this year and almost being a second-time parent, or in having your second child and knowing what to expect as a parent. He compared it to that coming into this season. What's been the biggest learning piece for UCF coming into this league?
I think UCF's, as far as that goes, UCF's done a pretty good job with roster retention. It's so, it's different. It's completely different. It's NIL and it's negotiations. There's stuff, there are details that we will never know what happens in some of those talks, but they did a pretty good job retaining the guys. I think it's just winning close games. Like UCF's been in a lot of close games last year, this year, just have been on the losing end of the vast majority of them. And that's tough, because it's one thing if you're rebuilding and you kind of feel like you're getting somebody, you're playing young guys, but you feel like you got a team that can compete. You're just losing close games. That's been the most difficult thing, I think, through these past, I guess, 1.5 years so far.
He's Brandon Helwig. Follow him again at UCFsports.com. Part of the Rivals Network. Should be a good game. I'm looking forward to. I feel like this could be maybe. I know maybe UCF probably gets this from everyone because UCF fans are very vocal on social media, so I almost felt like everyone wants to be their rival in some sense in the Big 12. But maybe this could be a little bit of a rivalry because I think they're new Big 12 programs, a lot of energy. I think this could be a pretty fun matchup. I know the last time at the Bounce House, it was a really good game. I think this will be another good one.
Yeah, and I think it'll be. I think everywhere BYU goes, they have great fan support. But I know there'll be great fans. So I remember the UCF basketball, the UCF BYU basketball game this past spring had a lot of BYU fans in Orlando. And there's an LDS Temple here, and there's a lot of BYU fans in Florida. So I know it'll be a great atmosphere on Saturday.
Yeah, that basketball game, that was one of my unexpected that energy in that gym was amazing at that one. So I can only expect it more of the same today with BYU and UCF. Thanks again, Brandon, and again, check out his work on UCFsports.com.
Thanks.
That's Brandon Helwig giving you the lowdown on everything you need to know about this UCF football team. Taking a break. On the other side, we'll get to passing game coordinator Fesi Sitake. This extended pregame coverage right here on KSL News Radio.
BYU, Central Florida.
Clean pocket for Jake. Goes deep down the middle for Darius Lassiter, who makes the catch. He does!
Special extended BYU pregame on KSL News Radio.
Good stuff previewing UCF. Right now, though, we want to preview BYU with their passing game coordinator. It's extended pregame coverage brought to you by UCCU. Love where you bank. Fesi Sitake. Wow, that was a memorable game last week against Oklahoma State. But now we turn the page. We look ahead to UCF, and we'll revisit that Oklahoma State game a little bit. We had a conversation earlier in the week with Fesi Sitake. Here you go.
How hard is it to stay focused on the day-to-day and not look ahead to maybe booking flights to Arlington and that type of stuff?
It's hard because people bring it up. So, but honestly, like that's our message as coaches. These guys are different. they get it. Like, they get all the praise over the weekend. You know, they hear their family and they see the highlight. They watch the cut. They're on social media. I mean, they do interviews, and so everything they're fielding, the praise, it's well deserved and it validates them. But it's our job as coaches to just continually remind them that it is literally, you know, A-Rod says it like week 5, this is Super Bowl 5. You know, week 6 it was Super Bowl 6. This last game was Super Bowl 7 against Oklahoma State, and this is Super Bowl 8, and it's a 1-week game every single time, and so we just have to do a great job at framing it the right way, making sure they do feel validated and understand that what they're doing is working and they got to stick with it, but also keeping them focused on the task at hand.
Is that 4th down catch that Chase hauled in, is that going to be one you show NFL scouts when they roll in here and say, this is the toughness of this guy?
Yeah, I think, and I hope I don't have to show them. I hope they watch it and see it themselves. I don't know. I think it's right if it's like 26 or 27 of his 29 catches are a first down or a touchdown. You know, and it just shows that he's a playmaker. You know, he's going to make the play when it comes his way. So I love it having that whole group. They're special. And Chase and Darius are right there neck and neck and doing a great job at keeping defenses honest. And I hope that stays the case moving forward.
Challenges does this UCF defense present? That showing against Iowa State, I think, was a surprise that they were in that. But I imagine, you know, just like any Big 12 team, there's strengths on that defense.
Yeah, everything always you hear it starts up front. They have 2 really good interior D linemen all across the board. Their D linemen are good. They have good pass rushers, but those 2 guys inside are as good as anyone we faced all year. And so, and then on the back end, they're very multiple in what they do. You know, there's some defenses, Baylor, for example, like we knew what they were going to do. One of the reasons they're good is they run what they run and they execute. These guys are problematic in that they run variations of cover 1, quarters, and cover 3, and they do it all a lot. And so it kind of keeps you guessing, and so that it puts it on us, you know, to have answers to any one of those. And we have to do a good job at prepping our guys to know that, hey, this is probably what they're going to do. And then just as important, or even more in some cases, is in-game. You know, finding out, okay, this is what they're doing, and we have to have some in-game adjustments. And that's where the media devices really come into handy. You know, last game, Oklahoma State, we had all these answers for cover 0 because they showed it a ton. They didn't want to run 1 rep of that. But we said, well, they'll for sure do cover 1. They barely ran man. They went straight too high stuff. They ran quarters. And so, you know, it's that's one of the factors on a short week too, that you add all those things up. And so for us to be able to pull that out, you know, was a testament of the guys being able to respond to in-game adjustments. The communication I thought was effective, and we did just enough to be able to pull it off.
How much are you and the coaching staff enjoying those chess matches in the Big 12? I mean, just hearing that, it's kind of really fun to hear, because the staffs, the resources that are put into all these teams, it's big time stuff. So it's a matter of inches.
It really is. It makes you feel like you're coaching. You know what I'm saying? And players matter. We saw it. Look no further than the last drive. Ultimately, players win, man. Like, it comes down to that. Those guys just made plays. But in terms of those adjustments, to be able to get instant feedback and say, hey, the last 8 plays when we're in 12 personnel, what are they doing? And to be able to say, okay, look at our call sheet. All right, let's look at these. And like that stuff is fun. That chess match is what it's about. It's what you prepare for and work for. And like I said, you can know all you want as a coach, but if the players can't adjust to that and respond in real time, it's not going to be as cool. And so I think that's what's made it special. It's not that we've been able to discuss things and produce, but most importantly, the players see it and they execute it, and it's been a blast.
Did the schedule change at all? Did you guys maybe stack up more meetings this week in preparation for leaving on Thursday?
No, it's the same. That extra day Saturday was really helped. Obviously for the players for rest, but for coaches, we got to jump, man, right away on we don't typically work on Sundays together as a staff. We do things individually, and so to have 2 full days on a Saturday and a Sunday to kind of do our own parts and our own game planning was huge. So I actually think we're ahead. Definitely further ahead than where we normally are. So I don't see anything change because of the early travel.
Last thing for you, how's the health of the group? We know Cody's missed a few games, but overall, how's the health? And can we expect Cody back at some point this year?
Yeah. The plan is for Cody. We're looking at Utah right now, and we'll see as it gets closer how that looks. But he's the only one out. Everyone's as healthy as can be under the circumstances. 7 games getting punched around a little bit. Obviously, Chase and Darius are probably the more beat-up guys. But everyone's great. Everyone's ready to roll and excited to keep it going.
Best of luck, Fessy, against UCF, and hope to talk down the road.
Appreciate you guys. Always good.
Taking the break, Mitch. On the other side, let's break down the matchup, the Cougs and the Knights. 3 and outs. We'll do a deep dive into this big game coming up next.
Who would have believed a 7-0 BYU Cougar football team heading into the home stretch?
Martin shaking off tackle, stiff arm, 5-4, 3-2-1, touchdown!
BYU has the belief and the kind of schedule that could lead this squad to a Big 12 title game.
Yeah, the team's really bought in on trying to get better. Guys got an early start on UCF. The mentality was, like we always say, stay humble and stay hungry.
This is KSL's special extended pregame coverage. BYU, UCF, brought to you by UCCU. Love where you bank. Here are Mitch Harper and Matt Baiamonte on KSL News Radio, 102.7 FM and 1160 AM.
We're getting closer to kickoff in Orlando, Florida, between BYU and UCF. Matt Baiamonte and Mitch Harper. We woke up nice and early for you, Cougar Nation, because this is a special season, and you're going to get all the content your hearts could ever desire, and we'll have you covered throughout the game as well on KSLSports.com. Right now, Mitch, let's do something we love to do on game days. It's a deep dive into the matchup. We call it 3 and out.
3 and out. A quick hit look at BYU's next opponent on the gridiron. It's 3 and out on Cougar Sports Saturday.
That's right, Matt. 3 and out, where we give you an in-depth breakdown of the matchup coming up. And this week it's BYU and UCF. 7-0 BYU, 3-4 UCF. You just hear those records and you think BYU should be the clear-cut favorite. But this thing's been going back and forth this week to where some prognosticators believe this is a game where UCF should win. And you look at the history in Florida, and BYU's had their share of struggles in this state. But let's break this game down with, and when you start any drive, when BYU's got 73 seconds left on the clock, it starts.
First down.
First down, and here on first down, we give a stat to keep an eye on in the matchup. What's the stat you're looking at, Matt?
Yeah, for me, the number is 12. That represents the total number of teams in the NCAA. How much longer will we be saying that, by the way? Teams in the NCAA. But for now, teams in the NCAA in top 30 scoring offense and defense. BYU is one of those teams. So when you hear this term, complementary football, and we've heard it a lot this year, this bears that out. The offense is doing their share. The defense is doing their share. Oh, and by the way, special teams, you have a kickoff return, a punt return, a reliable field goal kicker. This is complementary football. They're going to need complementary football to get out of this one undefeated and into a bye week.
I feel disappointed, Matt, because my stat is a little more negative. I guess the jaded, the dirty media member being jaded type, but it is a trend that needs to be fixed. BYU the last 3 games has had 10 drops by receivers on the offense. You think about those 10 passes, maybe Jake Retzlaff has another, 100 yards on his
completion
stats.
Percentage is much better too.
That's right. So take care of Jake by catching that football and taking care of possessions and extending the chains and moving forward. So hauling those catches. Chase Roberts, brilliant. That 4th down catch against Oklahoma State, that just highlights his ability. Parker Kingston's had some great catches. That Arizona game where he's in traffic and the defender's all over him, still comes up with the grab. Lasser's the one that's got to improve on the drop front. He's been the one he's had the big numbers, the big moments, but the minutia getting in the weeds, there's some opportunities for him to grow. And you heard that from Darius. He's wanting to clearly improve and get better, and he understands that there's a lot of opportunities and room to improve for him and this BYU offense.
Second down.
Let's give you some players to watch on both sides of this matchup. We'll start with BYU. For me, I'm looking at Chase. I think as Darius continues to shine, he continues to have 100-yard games and big plays. I'm starting to sense that there's going to be a little more bracket coverage his direction to slow him down, which should mean Chase Roberts is going to feast. Because I think through the first half of the year, everyone looked at Chase. And you look at Chase's numbers, his targets aren't as high, and now he's not leading the team in receptions or yards. I think that is because defenses were wanting to take him away. And Darius took advantage, and great. That's fantastic. As that starts to switch, I wouldn't be surprised to see Chase in the coming weeks have a game where he pops off for over 100, leads the team in receptions. It's a good problem to have, Mitch, when you have multiple high-end receivers and you don't know who to take away. One game it might be Chase. One game it might be Darius. I would not be surprised in this game if Chase Roberts leads the team in receptions.
That'd be great to see because it feels like we're due for a big Chase Roberts game. My guy to watch is L.J. Martin. I thought he was brilliant last week. 20 carries, 120 yards, and Aaron Roderick talked earlier in the week about the health of LJ and these running backs at large, and man, they're improving significantly since all the injuries that were piled up early in the season.
Yeah, LJ's 100%, and that's the guy we know and love. You know, we've been missing that, and thought he played very well and expect more of that. Hinckley played really well in the game as well. He is a really good blocker and had an explosive play on that option play, and he's really reliable too. Sione, we're expecting him to play this week as well, so yeah, excited to have him back.
Good things trending for this running back unit, but I think LJ is going to lead the way. 120 rushing yard performance, a career high last week. Thought he was great, and I expect more of the same coming up today against the UCF Knights. And then for UCF, Deshaun Pace, if that's a familiar name, if you're a deep college football Big 12 fan, he was on Cincinnati last year in Provo, switches over in league over to UCF. He's one of the top guys for the Knights. Anyone on UCF that's catching your attention?
Yeah, I mean, this is the main guy, but if you don't know UCF at all, RJ Harvey should scare you. I think he's the guy you have to slow down. You slow him down, you don't let him pop off for 50-yard touchdown runs, I think you'll be in a good spot. But offensively, it starts with RJ Harvey. BYU's got to slow down that running back.
Third down.
And third down, we give you some bold predictions. I can start things off here on this down. I'm going to follow up the conversation on L.J. Martin. I'm going to say L.J. has 3 touchdowns in this game. And L.J., I just think, continues to get better. And I think what stood out last week to me was he looked fresh. Even though he had a lot of injuries, shoulder, ankle, he hasn't taken many hits. And compared to so many players at this point of the season where you're game 8 and the grind of power conference football is wearing on players, LJ hasn't, taken many tackles. So he looked good last week. I expect more of the same. I feel like in a road environment, Aaron Roderick is going to want to neutralize any possibilities of turnovers, set the tone on the ground with LJ Martin, eat up that clock. This could be a game that goes by very fast with how often UCF runs the ball. BYU, if they follow the same lockstep, this could be a quick ball game. So I think LJ Martin's due for a big game. 3 touchdowns for Martin. What about for you?
I think BYU is going to gain over 500 yards of offense.
Whoa.
They almost gained that last week.
Yep.
If you take away some of those drops, I mean, that one to JoJo, that hit both of his hands. That would have been another chunk play. Look, Jake Retzlaff, for whatever you want to say about him, and I also kind of love Mitch. This is a side note, but I love that he's starting to get some national recognition. He was on the Rich Eisen show earlier in the week. I like that there's been sort of a spotlight put on his faith, the Jewish faith, juxtapose that with the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saint faith and how that's working and how it's a great thing for guys like Jake Retzlaff. That is exactly the message you want sent to people who aren't of the faith, that this is a place where you can play high-level football. We care about football here. You can focus on football. It sort of sounds a little bit like the messaging coming out of the basketball program where come here, develop, get ready for the NBA. Like, if this is a place for athletes to just come and hone their craft, that's a great thing. Jake, he still is a bit turnover prone, and Aaron Roderick noted that earlier in the week that this guy is still developing. Like, he's getting better, but let's not forget that this dude is not a finished product. I say all this to say, the thing I love about Jake, man, is he's ultra aggressive. He wants to push the ball down the field. He's not a dink and dunk. He wants chunk plays. And when you have a quarterback who thinks that way and plays that way, it lends to good offensive numbers. I don't believe in this UCF defense. I don't think they're that good. I think there's going to be chunk plays to be had. That's why I'm saying my bold prediction, over 500 yards of offense.
Love it. BYU, UCF extended pregame. He's Matt Baiamonte. I'm Mitch Harper. We're here in Orlando, Florida, getting you ready for kickoff 1:30 right here on KSL News Radio. We're taking a timeout. On the other side, let's hear from the head coaches in this matchup. Gus Malzahn, Kalani Sitake. What have they had to say about this matchup? Spoiler, Kalani is friends with Gus Malzahn. We'll talk more next.
Who is he not friends with? That's what I'm interested in, Mitch.
More extended pregame next.
BYU, Central Florida.
Clean pocket for Jake. Goes deep down the middle for Darius Lassiter, who makes the catch. He does!
Special extended BYU pregame on KSL News Radio.
Welcome back into extended pregame coverage. BYU and UCF. Mitch Harper and Matt Baiamonte with you. We typically hold it down here on these Saturdays. Cougar Sports Saturday, noon to 3. Also, Monday nights, Cougar Nation, 6 to 7, where we take your phone calls and get the voice of Cougar Nation here on the airwaves of KSL News Radio. We'll be on the air on Monday night to react to this BYU-UCF game. So whatever the outcome, hopefully it's a BYU win. But whatever the outcome, sound off on Monday night with us, 6 to 7, here on the legacy home of the Cougars, KSL News Radio. This is a good head coach matchup, BYU and UCF, Matt. Gus Malzahn from UCF. You know, this guy that was at Auburn, and he felt like he was always on the hot seat at Auburn, even though he had a lot of success taking down Nick Saban.
They want him back after what's been happening down there?
Safe to say, I would think. I mean, he got him to a national title game at the BCS era, and then Kalani Sitake riding high with a 7-0 start this season and is silenced. Many of his critics and a lot of national pundits said he could be on the hot seat, and that has gone out the wayside. It's out the door now with BYU number 11 in the AP Top 25 poll. This was Kalani setting the stage for UCF week and trying to stop this UCF ground attack that's pretty potent, one of the top 5 best in college football.
Well, I think Gus Malzahn can do a lot different runs. I think they can do some of the things very similar. They already have that in their arsenal of type of plays that they can run. The Oklahoma State adjustment was that we weren't expecting them to just sell out on with a QB run, and even when they brought in Bowman to play, he still ran the ball. So we had to keep that in mind as we went through our scheme. And then the difficult part is that we just struggled on third downs, getting out of the third downs and the short yardage, because they're third and mostly manageable and short. And then even when we had third longs, we weren't able to capitalize on it.
Jay Hill sort of doubled down on that as well, Mitch, which was there were assignment breakdowns against Oklahoma State. That can certainly be cleaned up. But when you're facing 3rd and 1 repeatedly, it's hard to get out of that down. So there's just, I think, also an emphasis there on being better on 1st and 2nd, because if you can keep UCF in 3rd and long, how often are they going to run? And then do you press man and take away the short game because you don't fear them over the top? Like, there's a lot at play here in terms of defending this Malzahn offense, but this is not, let's not get it twisted, Mitch. We're not talking about a Gus Malzahn offense with, some of the great talent that he had at Auburn. I'm just trying to think at the top of my head some of the great offenses.
He coached Cam Newton. He was the OC.
Okay. I was going to say Cam Newton.
Nick Marshall.
Nick Marshall's the one that comes to mind. Who could forget that? Some of his miraculous plays that year where Auburn had some upsets. But this this UCF team, they're not up to that caliber. I'd be stunned if they tried to do anything other than be who they are. This is in a lot of ways kind of a clash of who can out-execute in terms of BYU defense versus UCF offense. If BYU can handle the stuff that they couldn't against Oklahoma State, they'll be in a great place. But Gus Malzahn he's a longtime offensive coach. I think he's well respected in this sport, and you have to fear him from that respect. But this UCF team isn't even as good as last year's UCF team, in my opinion.
Well, and it's interesting when you talk about hot seats. Kalani faced that early in the year. Gus Malzahn's facing it maybe a little bit. I don't know.
So.
I don't know what the buyout situation is for Gus in Orlando, but it seems like UCF faithful, based on ticket sales, they're putting their hands up saying this team isn't good. Because UCF, to their credit, this is a program that's experienced a high level of success. They claim a national championship in 2017. I know it was controversial, but hey, BYU had a national title that was unanimous, but still controversial. We can appreciate that. And they know a high level of football in recent memory. I mean, they had a lot of New Year's Six BCS bowls during the years. So UCF's had
the thing that's concerning about Malzahn. Sorry to cut you off there, Mitch, but for as brilliant of an offensive mind as many say he is, where's the NFL talent? Where's the quarterback play? Because when we were talking about Auburn, I'm like, okay, Auburn's good. And then I'm like, wait a minute, why can't I remember any great quarterbacks? Like Nick Marshall was not a great college.
He was a wide receiver, I believe. I think he got converted into a quarterback.
Where's the high-level quarterback play? That doesn't seem to accompany a Gus Malzahn team.
It's an interesting point, and he's got another quarterback that I don't really fear, and I'm hesitant to say that because then we see some just Cody Vaz historic performance.
The ghost of Cody Vaz. And that was a high-ranked BYU team too.
Jakari Brown is the quarterback for UCF, and Gus Malzahn made it clear he is QB1, not KJ Jefferson.
He's our starting quarterback. I'm real excited about him. You talk about his potential is really off the charts. He's got as good as arm as probably anybody in college football. I like the way he's handled himself. I mean, he ran physical, he ran hard. The moment wasn't too big, and so a lot of really good things, to build upon with him.
Jakari Brown, former Miami Hurricane, transferred over to UCF, came into the season as the third-string quarterback. KJ Jefferson, the ex-Arkansas Razorback, I think we all, including myself, thought that's who BYU's going to face for a third consecutive year. KJ has not looked good, and they haven't came out and publicly just said it, but actions speak louder than words. It seemed like he just flat out got benched based on performance. They went to E.J. Colson 2 weeks ago, a 17-year-old quarterback, true freshman, who reclassified to the 2024 class. He started against Cincinnati. He was one of the youngest quarterbacks to start a college football game in the history of the sport. He then gets benched in-game for Jakari Brown, who didn't pass the ball well against Iowa State. He's clearly a runner. BYU's got to stop his ability to run.
Yeah, that's the key right there, Mitch. You have to slow down the run because you fear what happened last week against Oklahoma State, where coming into that game, I think the coaching staff and a lot of fans, we thought that Oklahoma State would make a quarterback change, and they did. And it felt like they weren't prepared for it, honestly. And it's weird to say that because that was so uncharacteristic for this defense. In this particular game, they're not coming off a bye. You actually have the advantage in terms of preparation days and rest, an extra day because you played on that Friday night game. You know what they're going to do. Now you have to go and stop it. And that's sometimes we make football out to be harder than it is. This is not one of those games, Mitch, where football is hard. This game is simple. If you can take care of the football offensively and do what you do, and the defensively plug the run, force them to pass the ball, BYU is going to win the game.
You talk about simple. Gus Malzahn made it simple in his assessment. We've heard these lines about BYU in the past, but this was Gus on BYU.
They're a legit team. You can tell how they're undefeated. They found a way to win. They may not played their best game last week, but they found a way to win. That's what really good teams do. Like I said, defensively, their defensive ends, I got two of them that I'm real impressed with. They're very aggressive. They've been with this same defense coordinator, I guess, for 3 years. And offensively, what are they, number 4 offense in our league, and they're balanced too. They're a veteran team. You can tell they're an older veteran team, and so it'll be a good test for us.
Oh, there we go.
They're so old. They're so old, Mitch. They have a quarterback, a starting running back, a starting receiver, who are not old. They did not serve missions for the church. They're not members of the church. They're LJ's young.
There it is. And honestly, the mature older line is not applicable anymore. Average age for BYU is 21.7. Look, there's always a guy or two, Tyler Batty, Connor Pay, they're older. But we're talking about a sport now that has dudes that are getting set to maybe play their 8th year of college football.
There's a guy in this state that could play an 8th, or is that what you just said, Cam Rising?
Yeah.
He could come back for his 8th season.
There's a guy at, I believe it's Miami, who's in his 9th year in college football, his first season. Now he's had a lot of injuries, but I'm just saying, like COVID and all the waivers that get thrown around left and right, we have to stop with the mature line. And guess what? If it was such a recruiting advantage, please,
everyone would send people
them out.
You want to go on a mission? Please. If you're even considering it, we'll give you a heavy NIL
third
deal
world country for 2 years and never master your craft for 2 years, and then come back and be an offensive lineman that was once 310, now you're 240? Do you want to do that? Please. Anyway, just had to bring that up. BYU UCF extended pregame coverage. Mitch Harper, Matt Baiamonte, we're here in Orlando. Taking a break. We'll get you ready for hour number 3, score predictions and more next here on Extended Pregame.
The undefeated BYU Cougars are tracking toward the Big 12 championship game.
The snap, the ride, the keep by Retzloff, the touchdown!
And possibly a berth into the college football playoffs.
Jet sweep, cut up field, get in for 6, touchdown! LJ with the TD.
BYU, the team nobody predicted, led by the quarterback no one believed in, now ranked number 11 in the nation. Before Arlington or the postseason, 5 teams stand in the way, starting with the UCF Knights.
Their record does not speak for how good of a football team they're probably the best 3-4 football team in the country, and I know they're going to play us really tough, especially since they'll be at home.
You're listening to special extended pregame coverage. BYU, UCF, sponsored by UCCU. Love where you bank. Our hosts are Mitch Harper and Matt Baiamonte on Utah's legacy home of the Cougars, KSL News Radio.
Hour number 3 of extended pregame for BYU and UCF. Happy game day, Cougar Nation. Enjoy this. These game days are few and far between. They're so precious. And, man, they're even more precious when you got an undefeated, number 11 ranked BYU football team to cheer on later today. Kickoff 1:30 between BYU and UCF. We are here in Orlando getting you ready for kickoff between the Cougs and the Knights. And, Matt, I think both you and I last week were absolutely floored like the rest of Cougar Nation when BYU moved down the field with ease on Oklahoma State and Jake Retzlaff connected with Darius Lassiter. This was Darius talking about that moment over the Pokes and looking ahead to these Knights. BYU football game week. The Cougars getting ready to take on the UCF Knights, and joining me now is BYU wide receiver Darius Lassiter. Darius, I got to ask, with the game winner against Oklahoma State, what was the reaction with, like, when you got on your phone, saw the reaction, the responses? How fun was that, and how much was your phone blowing up over the weekend?
Yeah, it was a lot. It was a lot of notifications and just texts, just congratulations, and it was a lot of emotions, a lot of happy, a lot of sad, and then just a lot of just. You just expect yourself to kind of do that. So emotions all over the place. But yeah, it was a great feeling just to get my first game winner under my belt.
It was pretty cool when I saw you. I was waiting in the post game press conference room, which you later went into, but you had a moment on Instagram Live with your brothers. How cool was that? Kind of share that moment with them, who weren't in the stands, I don't believe, but you got to share that on social media.
Yeah, those guys, those are my biggest fans, and they know what I've been through as a football player, and they just want me to succeed at the highest level, and just to finally see it all just kind of just happening right now, and it's just kind of a big moment for them, and they just want me just to enjoy the moment and just live in it.
And it's been a couple great moments. This past 3 games, 3 of your best 5 games as receiver in college. It's some big-time receiving yard totals. What do you kind of attribute this recent string of success that you've been having with kind of setting some career highs?
It's just to be consistent, just to kind of just build on each and every week. last week was good, but it just wasn't good enough. And that's just the mindset that I have for me as a player, and that's just how everybody on the team just looks at it for me. They know that it's a bigger step that I can take. I know we're in game 8, but I still just feel like I haven't played the best of my ability yet. And so hopefully this week I can go out there and prove that this week.
It kind of feels like a theme with this team where everyone across the board feels like, yeah, you might be 7-0, but there's still kind of another gear or two to this team.
Yeah, on offense, we know that each week is a Super Bowl for us, and that's just how we just look at it. And we know we didn't play our best, not even quite, because we know what this offense can look like at full power when everything is just clicking for us, because that's why we come out here and do the reps and everything like that. So. Everybody tells us every day, yeah, we should be proud of the win and everything like that, but it's a lot of stuff out there that we didn't do good, and that just shows that what this offense is capable of, and the level that when we can get there, it's gonna be crazy.
What do you feel like is an area that can improve?
Everything. We're not just out there throwing for 400 yards and just running for 250 every game. So I feel like once we can do that on a consistent basis, I think that offense would be there.
I'm curious, Darius, and I probably know the answer, but I want to ask you. I mean, after BYU, do you want to pursue the NFL? Because I know you had a brother or have a brother that's played in the NFL. Is that something that's a goal of yours?
Yeah, I've been in college this long. I think I should try to go reach that dream. Yeah, it's kind of just always been something on my mind since I was young. And also having brothers to play the game, and then my dad as well. So football's just kind of just been around me. So.
How young was football? Did it kind of get to you? I mean, was it just from the moment you were born because of your dad?
No, I really didn't start playing football until I was about like 13 or so. So he didn't want us to play when we were young.
Interesting. I didn't realize that. And how much have you been enjoying this season and the kind of the relationship and chemistry you've developed with Jake?
Yeah, I'm loving this season. I mean, I feel like when anybody, you still undefeated in this time of the year, it's always great, and that just always keep a mood on your face, whether you're out there making a lot of plays or not. So, and then my chemistry with Jake just kind of continues to go up each and every week. It just kind of shows the trust level factor that he has in me, just to make plays down the field and things like that. So, as the weeks keep going, hopefully that just continues to go up.
How impressed have you been with Jake's growth? I mean, everyone in this team has grown a lot since the beginning of the season, but Jake in particular, who faced a lot of outside noise from people and criticism, how impressed have you been being in the trenches with him?
Yeah, playing quarterback at BYU is hard because a lot of people just have opinions of what things should look like, and I feel like in that case, if that was the case, everybody would be here playing it. So Jake was chose to be in this position for a reason, and he got all 10 other guys on offense behind him, and everybody that's not in that starting lineup as well. So I'm impressed, especially after last year, after going 0-4, and people was just kind of just trying to kick him to the curb. He didn't let that get to him and defy him as a quarterback and as a person. And he just continues to work each and every day, and the strides that he's taking and the confidence and the swagger, you kind of just see it just showing up on Saturdays.
Where do you feel like you've had the biggest growth this year? I mean, I know it's always tough to kind of talk about yourself because you want to do more, but where do you feel like you have improved the most?
I feel like my leadership-wise, not even my ability on the field, because I just kind of feel like that just kind of comes with it, but the better you can make your teammates and make the people around you, that's just going to make the team 10 times better.
What is this locker room like? I mean, we see the cut, and we see the clips of you guys dancing, celebrating after wins. But on a day like today, what's kind of like the mood? Are you guys talkative, always interacting? Like, what's the kind of the vibe of this team day in, day out?
Yeah, especially coming off after a win, everybody's up, juiced up, amped up, ready to go out there and get another one because we know the feeling that it feels, and it feels great to win. And that's what we want to keep doing each and every game. And we kind of just this year we've been closer as a team than we were last year, and you kind of can see it just. O-linemen and receivers just kind of getting together, D-linemen, cornerbacks hanging out, and things like that. So I feel like the locker room is really close this year. We don't really have anybody that's just kind of just drifting right in their own part. I feel like all 120-some guys are just bought into this ultimate goal that we got.
Any tweaks to the East Coast travel this year compared to last? I know you guys went to West Virginia last year. Has there been anything different in preparation? I know you guys leave Thursday, but anything different this year?
It's hard for me to say because last year I didn't make that trip because I got hurt. So I think everything, though, since me being last year and then kind of just knowing what to expect, I think everything's the same as last year. We just kind of tempoed everything down just so we can kind of get our bodies back under us. And we kind of just changed our sleep schedule so we can kind of already adapt to it. And right when we get there, we're not just up, laggy, and on game day, we're ready to go.
You ever played in Florida before?
Nah, I haven't. This is going to be my first time.
So it should be a good time. Any thoughts on UCF's defense? Anything that's kind of characteristics that stand out about their secondary?
Yeah, they disguise a lot of things on defense. So we know what coverages they like to run, but it's kind of hard to just choose and know which one they're going to do just because they're so good at disguising coverages. So I feel like that's what they do the best, and I think it's going to be a good challenge for this offense to step up to.
Well, Darius, congrats on that game winner, and congrats on all the success you've been having this season and this team. So best of luck this week, and we'll talk down the road.
Yeah, thank you.
Good stuff, Mitch, with Darius Lassiter, who has really become, I think, a fan favorite. And I love the story of a guy like Darius Lassiter, who it was a hard grind to get to this point at BYU, where he probably felt like he belonged at this level all along, finally got his shot. And he's not the only one to have done this, but it just always warms my heart to have someone come in who has no association with BYU, is not a member of the faith, and yet loves and embraces BYU. That's become Darius Lassiter. That's become Keelan Marion. There's a lot of those guys on this team, and you love that people are coming in here. Jake Retzlaff is one of these guys, and they're having a great experience at BYU, and they're winning, and they're playing high-level football. Like, that is something I think BYU fans have known and wanted to see more for decades, and now you're seeing it. You're at the highest level. You've got guys making plays who aren't members of the faith but are embracing BYU. The only thing Darius has to do, and I'm glad you brought it up earlier, is clean up the drops, because he's an explosive big play receiver, Mitch, and right now he's Jake Retzlaff go-to guy. He's big on celebrations, and I have mixed feelings about that. Sometimes the shrug doesn't hit as much when you have a couple drops in there, but clean those up, and then maybe you can play in the NFL. He's got the size, he's got the speed, he's got some great tape. Just got to clean up those drops, and he's playing great football, Mitch.
BYU UCF extended pregame. Taking a break. On the other side, we'll give you our score predictions as we count it down to kickoff. BYU and UCF from Orlando, right here on KSL News Radio.
BYU, Central Florida.
Retzlaff gun. Takes the helmet high snap. Short drop. Lofts for the end zone. Kingston there. Kingston touchdown! Parker Kingston hauls it in!
Special extended BYU pregame on KSL News Radio.
It's been a fun morning getting you ready for BYU and UCF. Extended pregame all morning long has been brought to you by UCCU. Love where you bank. How you feeling, Mitch, about this game? We're getting closer, about 2 hours to go. We're live in Orlando. How are you feeling about it?
I'm feeling good. I feel good about this game for BYU. You always want to make sure that the personnel is in a great spot, and BYU by most accounts is all healthy. Everyone's got some banged up a little bit, some bruises, whatnot. But from what we've seen to this point and heard, BYU should be in a good place. So we'll see how it all shakes out as far as the personnel front goes for BYU when we get inside the stadium. But I feel good about this game, and I just think that BYU, we haven't talked about this enough today, but BYU showed moments last week where they're a team of destiny in some respects, where it just feels like they're destined to, no matter what the circumstances are, they will find a way to win. Late game situation where the offense has to put together a touchdown drive with less than a minute to go? Check. Can the defense win a rock fight against a Power 4 team that might win a Power 4 conference? Check. They get it done at SMU. They just find ways to get victories. Can you hold on and get a takeaway at Baylor? Yeah, you got it done. I mean, they just find ways to win. And they're not going to be the definition of, ooh, every single week they look like the national champion. But, man, they're good enough in this 12-team playoff era in a college football landscape where anyone can go down on any given week. BYU is rising to the occasion each and every week, and I expect more of the same this week against the Knights.
Nobody looks like that in college football, Mitch. Texas didn't look great against Georgia, and Georgia's had games since blowing the doors off of Clemson to start the season where they haven't looked great.
Right.
Like, no one looks great all the time, and that's why I loved what Gus Malzahn said earlier. We played that clip. Really good football teams find a way to win games when you don't play your best football. That's been BYU. Now, I would like to see a game, maybe it's later today, where they do play their best football and soundly beat someone and show what they're capable of, because we haven't seen that yet. But in the meantime, they're getting better. They're improving. Remember at the start of the year, there was a lot of talk about clean up the turnovers, the turnovers. And now, look, there's still some turnovers, but there's a lot more points coming from the offense as well. I think that has gotten better. The decision-making has gotten better. And I think today, Mitch, to give you my score prediction, I think they will be improved from last week. I like BYU to win 37-24. I think the defense will be better. I believe in this offense right now. They're healthy. Their running game has looked better than it's ever been. That's an underrated point about this BYU football team. The passing game, I think, has always been pretty steady, but the run game was not at the beginning of the season. And then you had the injuries. Then you had Sione Moa against Kansas State, and he gets hurt. Well, now you look, Sione Moa is going to be available. Hinkley Ropati is available and healthy. Aaron Roderick loved his game last week against Oklahoma State. Oh, then by the way, LJ Martin, a highly recruited kid, finally had his breakthrough game where you saw that potential against Oklahoma State. Because up to that point, I think a lot of it had been hype more than production with LJ, but now we've seen the hype and the production meet. He's healthy and available as well. Love that run game for BYU. I think that'll help them have a double-digit win, 37-24.
I like that pick. I like that pick a lot better than mine. I got BYU still scoring in the 30s. I expect that's kind of a benchmark every week. I think these score predictions that people throw out of BYU 21, the opponent 17. No, that was maybe early in the season, BYU. Now it's every week they're putting up at least 33, 35 points every single week. I got BYU 33, UCF 27. I expect UCF to have a little bit of energy from, their performance against Iowa State. You don't want to chalk it up to a moral victory, but it did give you kind of a proof of concept with Jakari Brown that they can be competitive. And Iowa State, like BYU, undefeated, and they went blow for blow with Iowa State and even had a pick six. BYU's got to avoid that, and I think they will. But, I expect UCF will have a little bit of success on the ground because they lean so heavily onto that side. You can't stop them completely, but do not give up the big one. So I'm willing to say that they'll have some drives that, in some touchdowns. So I'll give them a few extra points, but I think BYU gets it done. I could see this being a game where it's, 30-17 and they tack on a touchdown late, kind of similar to Baylor. Maybe not 21-0 to start, but I think BYU gets off to an early start, though. I think they could be up 10-0 after the first quarter and kind of sets the tone and takes care of business the rest of the way. But I do believe BYU wins this game and goes to 8-0 heading into the bye week. This is an empty-the-tank spot. Kalani loves these games going into a bye week, and then it sets the table for the rivalry in 2 weeks where you could go into Salt Lake and be undefeated and have the nation talking about you when no one was talking about you in the summertime and everyone was talking about Utah. You have the chance, BYU, as an undefeated team, maintain that perfection, and then you're the talk of college football and the Big 12 heading into a huge rivalry game in 2 weeks.
It's a good point. I just think this BYU team, man, I think they'll find a way. I believe in them. That doesn't mean I think they're going to go undefeated because that's very hard to do in college football. I just don't think this is the game where there's going to be a loss. And I think we also need to recognize in today's day and age of college football how much of a difference it makes to play in a short week versus a longer week. That Iowa State game ended late. UCF got home very late on Saturday night, so that bled into Sunday a little bit, whereas BYU, they had all Saturday. You heard Jay Hill talk about this. You heard Fesi Satake talk about this. The extra prep, getting into it, getting a little extra rest. I think that might manifest a quick start as well, just because they're going to be a little healthier. They've got a little more preparation on UCF. I think that'll help BYU in a couple hours.
BYU, too, has had recent success in the state of Florida. They're on a 2-game win streak. There used to be that distinction of, BYU can't win in Florida. They were 0-8 in their first 8 tries, but Kalani's teams have reeled off the last 2 wins. They won at USF in 2022, and then 2020, they won against these UCF Knights in the Boca Raton Bowl. So Cougs looking to maintain that winning streak in the Sunshine State here. And talk about sunshine, we're loving the weather here. I mean,
man, those poor people back in Utah, man. Woo, this is good living, dude.
We get 1 week at a BYU game where it was 40-something degrees, and we're like, get us back in the heat. Get us back in the heat. And we're loving it here in Florida. It's a great...
You know who might be loving it more than us? I think there's one player on the team that might be loving it more than us. Can you guess who it is?
Crew Wakely?
Reiner Swanson.
Oh, yeah.
That was a tough awakening last week. The beach kid from Southern California, but he's having a great time here in Florida.
Good point. I hope to see him get an increased role. He was asked about, coaches were asked about him this week. I hope to see more production for Reiner and just continue to get better, this BYU team. I want to see a game where you felt like BYU improved. That's all you can ask for. And the final score will be what it is, but just get better this week. And if the Cougs do that, I feel confident about this matchup, Matt. I think that Kalani's culture will shine through in this game. UCF, they've had a lot of players leave to the transfer portal already. The culture's kind of in question with this team. Is Jakari Brown enough to kind of swing that thing? I don't think so. So this should be BYU's game, and if they do so, then BYU goes to 8-0 and has everything in front of them heading into November football. Remember the days when November used to be, BYU's off the map? Not anymore if you can get this win over UCF, and we both think the Cougs will. We will have extensive coverage inside the Bounce House here for BYU UCF. Go to KSLSports.com, the KSL Sports app. We'll even have maybe some post-game breakdowns, I think podcast potentially with us both being on location. We'll have to roll it out big for BYU and UCF. But that's going to do it for our extended pregame coverage today. We'll toss it over to network coverage with Greg Wrubell and Hans Olsen here in Orlando. This has been extended pregame coverage on KSL News Radio.